Hello, Guilty Feminist. This is an extra special additional episode of The Guilty Feminist that I recorded in Calais with volunteers working with refugees. There's a lot less press in Calais now that the jungle has been dismantled, but there's still a lot of refugees and amazing volunteers out there doing work who need your help. At the end of this podcast, listen out for links so you too can get involved. I'm a feminist, but I am a little bit jealous about the amount of incredibly multicoloured, kind of fabulous outfits that the volunteers in Calais here are wearing. And I've got to say, I do feel a bit dull. I've come in sort of navy blue, thinking France chic, sure. And everyone else has got like really super cool red and purple. And I feel like I'm the least fabulous person here right now. That's true. That's true. Now, Evie's offering me her Technicolor Dream Penny to take with me. I couldn't possibly, Evie. I couldn't possibly. No. I feel the centre needs it.
I'm a feminist, but I think that my sexuality might slightly be dictated by the length of my hair. Having recently got a buzz cut.
Has the buzz cut made you queerer?
Yes.
Has it? Is it like an actor?
Came out after I cut my hair.
You cut your hair and then you came out. Is it like an actor starting with the shoes? You start with the haircut.
It must have started with the shoes.
Wow. Okay. Okay. That's less Technicolor Dreamcoat, more Samson.
I've got a good one to answer that. I'm a feminist, but I'm scared that if I cut my hair, I'll then get stereotyped as the lesbian that I actually am.
Hey! Anybody else?
I've got one from somebody else.
Great,
be
perfect.
Here, but it kind of links onto mine.
Okay.
So this is my boyfriend.
Is this a podcast? No.
Now we've committed.
Have you not said boyfriend yet? Is
Well,
this the first
no,
time you said it?
no.
Yes.
No. We had the conversation. We've had it. It's fine.
It's complicated.
It's not complicated. It's fine. But last night when we were, we knew that you were coming. We sat with these guys and came up with "I'm a feminist," but via WhatsApp. And his was, "I'm a feminist, but I almost gave myself a hernia trying to lift a barrel of water into a van. But because there were women walking past, I pretended that I felt nothing." Which leads on to my "I'm a feminist, but I did find it very attractive that he was lifting that barrel of water quite easily into the van. So it worked.
Nice.
I'm a feminist, but the other night I got into a club wearing skiing trousers and adventure boots and somebody bought me a drink and I was really flattered about that.
I'm a feminist, but I get unnecessarily stressed when I need to go to the toilet in the caravans that we live in as volunteers because everybody can hear everything and of course girls don't pee, poo or fart or anything like that.
Very good. I'm a feminist, but when you were telling me about the caravans earlier and said the loo's inside but there's loads of people in there, I was like, no.
You get very close to people very quickly.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do.
I always turn the taps on.
Yeah, I do that.
Do you? Do you? Yeah.
But then I feel bad for wasting water.
I know a story about that. Marilyn Monroe, when she went to stay with Arthur Miller's parents, she was her bedroom was right next to theirs, and she was really nervous, so she turned the taps on while she went to the loo. And the next day, Arthur Miller's dad said, "She's a lovely girl, Arthur, but she pees like a horse." Live from the Calais warehouse, it's me, Deborah Francis-White, with The Guilty Feminist, starring the volunteers of Calais and Dunkirk. I just have to send this to my flatmate.
Steve.
Yeah, do lots of you know Steve? I feel like Steve's kind of famous.
He is. Steve is very famous.
So Steve lives with me now. He's my flatmate. I got involved through Timepiece. Does anyone know Timepiece? It's a new app coming out that's a skill-sharing time banking app that connects refugees with local people in the UK. And I saw the video for it, and it was not long after the EU referendum vote. And I was just really moved by all of these sweet people kind of going, I could teach English and cycling proficiency. And lots of incredible, local refugees going, I can teach the dancing from my country and cooking. And, it was really lovely. And it was really heartwarming. So I was like, oh, if people heard refugees on podcasts talking about something that wasn't being a refugee, I think that would really help. If they were talking about cooking or dressmaking or, poetry or something like that. I think it would really help. So I created a couple of podcasts specifically for this, and also invited timepiece guests onto our current podcasts. And Steve turned up to play Global Pillage, which is it's like a bit like QI, but it's diversity based. And he turned up to do that. And then he said he was sofa surfing, and I was going away for 3 weeks, and we really needed someone to look after our cats. And he told me he had rescued cats in the Calais jungle, and he was a big cat fan. And so he stayed for 3 weeks. And when I came back, it just became clear that if Steve left, one of my cats would go with him. So I was like, it's the one I'm fonder of as well. So they'd really bonded, and we had a spare room, and I was like, well, why don't you stay? And then, a couple of months later, Steve's sort of become like my brother, and now I'm like, never leave us. He's kind of taught me a lot and introduced me to a lot of people. And then another friend of mine who's flies small aircraft, so was coming in from Jersey to the jungle to fly in supplies, also connected me with other people. So I sort of have a couple of catalysts, and I sort of got involved in it. And then I realised that with the podcast, we have a very activated listenership. So our listenership is nowhere near the BBC, but every single one of our listeners gives a fuck. So that's the thing. It's not wallpaper. They've sought the podcast out and they're listening and they're engaged. And I think a lot of people would really like to know how to help and what to do. But they either have time and no money, or money and no time, or no time and no money, or just no idea of how to kind of get purchased, which I didn't know. I didn't know. I thought it seemed overwhelming and sad and other and all-consuming. And what if I said the wrong thing or did the wrong thing? And I think the more refugees that I meet and the more volunteers that I meet, the more I realise it is incredibly accessible, an incredibly valuable connection, and there's so much you can do that's really amazing. It's just, I feel like it's easier to be useful in a small amount of time or with a small amount of money with this than anything else in my life that I've ever experienced. It's pretty hard to be useful in real life, actually. A lot of what we do is frankly bollocks. If you work in an office, frankly, most of what you do, if you left tomorrow, if you died tomorrow, they would go, oh, that's sad. And then they would replace you with someone else. And within a week to 10 days, if that, every contribution you'd ever made to that office would be identical to that someone else could have made. So in real life, I think it's quite difficult to make a difference. Or you spend ages finding the perfect birthday present for your best friend, and you really put loads of thought into it, and you give it to them, and they go, oh. And you go, what do you mean, oh? And they go, yeah, I've sort of got one like this. And then you go, I hate you. And everything that you did for that, you plan a surprise party for somebody and then they don't really like surprise parties, or somebody told them 3 weeks ago. Sometimes you make huge efforts in life to make a big difference or do something wonderful. You go and do a PhD to discover whether or not earthworms can procreate backwards. No, turns out no, they can't. And you've wasted 7 years of your life and everyone else's time and money and funding. A lot of what we do feels a bit purposeless. And something that I've really understood from getting to know refugees, reaching out to people who are in situations, just WhatsApping people who I've just met through friends on Facebook, and regularly contacting them and saying, how's things going, having jokes, sending kids colouring books, sending little memes back and forth. It feels so huge. You can feel how much that means to people. There's one lad I've been talking to who's in France, who's from Sudan, who's called Musab. I know that he's very down. He's been stateless for 10 years. It's a lot. And he's from Darfur. And he honestly feels like it's illegal for him to live on planet Earth. That is how he feels. And he's not wrong. The only place on planet Earth that's legal for him to live is somewhere where he will definitely die. And it's an extraordinary fact. There is no patch of ground, no air that boy can breathe that is legal. And that's a lot. And just to be able to just say hi to him every few days. And the other day he messaged me and went, I got my new court date for his asylum application. And he was so excited, and he had good news and he had hope. And he wanted to share good news. And having people, and I'm sure he's connected in with other people as well who he shared that with, but having a few people you can tell your good news to. Imagine if you had no one to share your good day with, no one to share your hope with. That's as bad as no one to share your sadness with. So understanding that and really through people who are frankly much more humanitarian than I am, much more wonderful people than I am, who seem to have much more motivation and capacity and to disrupt their lives for the sake of others is, I've learnt that from people both in London and here today. And today I'm with some of those people, and they are volunteers at Calais who are working with refugees. So first of all, I want to say hi to you guys. Hi. Hi. So thank you very much for having me. Can you tell me where you guys volunteer? So Caroline is the volunteer that I've been talking to, who's invited me over. The only thing I said, what do you want, Caroline? Can I bring you and the volunteers anything just to make your lives a bit better? I want to bring supplies for refugees, but what indulgence would you like? And she said sticky toffee pudding. I was like, I've got this. I was like, don't worry, Caroline, I've got this. I'm going to St Pancras. There's not one, but there's 2 Marks and Spencers there. And I checked with her, is M&S the right one? She said, yes, M&S. I go there, neither M&S at St Pancras is currently carrying sticky toffee pudding, which as far as I can see is their landmark product. When I think of M&S, I think of pants, knickers, and I think of sticky toffee pudding. The M&S there had neither. £10 2 for 1 meal deal. And that's what, sorry, what's your name?
Evie.
That's what Evie thinks of. But there was no sticky toffee pudding. So now, and I felt so terrible because Caroline, all she asked for, she's here in the freezing cold, working day and night, being an incredible humanitarian, and all she asked for was sticky toffee pudding, and I came and I did not deliver. Guys, if you're listening out there in a Guilty Feminist podcast land, hello, I failed on the first hurdle. I didn't bring any, but I'm going to box up loads. You have to tell me how many you want. And I'm going to post them over. Also, I've worked out, because I can walk to St Pancras from my house. I am 50 minutes door to door from St Pancras to Calais. That's quicker than visiting anyone I know in London once you get on the tube or in an Uber. I mean, it's over an hour to get anywhere in London, and that's a scientific fact. To get from any one point in London to any other point in London, over an hour. So I'm going to be here all the time, guys. And I promise to bring sticky toffee pudding every other time I come. So Caroline, can you tell us a little bit about who's here today?
Yes.
And where we are?
So we are now in the warehouse in Calais that is managed by Help Refugees and L'Auberge, with also the Refugee Community Kitchen and many, many teams who are working every single day to help refugees here in Calais and in Dunkirk. Around the table is a fantastic mix of people from all sorts of different teams. I myself are from the Refugee Women's Centre, and we mostly support women and children and families who are both in the camps of Calais and Dunkirk.
To give us a cheer if you work at the Women's Centre. Woo! Okay, so lots of you work elsewhere. Where do you work?
I work with Refugee Community Kitchen and sometimes Utopia 56.
What's Utopia 56?
So they are an organisation, French organisation that distribute food, clothing, hygiene items at 4 different points in Calais, and the food comes from Refugee Community Kitchen, who do food in Calais and Dunkirk.
Great. Anyone else work anywhere else?
We 1, 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5. On the school bus project, which is a big double-decker bus which drives around Calais and soon Dunkirk, also providing mobile learning for refugees.
This is for school children?
It's for everybody, everyone's welcome, but we absolutely prioritise children.
And so you teach children?
Yeah. We create a safe, quiet learning space for them.
Amazing. What amazing work to be doing. How long do most volunteers stay? How long do you...
So most people will say they come for a week, and anybody who's long here has probably said they'll come for a week and then ends up staying for anywhere between 6 months and a year.
Wow.
But lots of people come here, a lot of the short-term volunteers come here for, a couple of days or a week, and then there's, anybody else can range between a month and, a year plus.
I went to Greece just before last Christmas for a fortnight. I had to actually close the camp to get me to leave.
Wow. So you were to Greece for a fortnight and then they had to close the camp to get you to leave. Is that why they closed the camp? Because if so, you may have been working against the best interest there. Of like, she's not going to go unless we close it down. And the refugees all went, yeah, good, no, let's do it. Has it changed your perception of the world, your perspective, your happiness factor? How has it changed you as individuals?
I think that for me it's had a huge impact, as it does on most people that come, whether you come for an hour, a few days, a week, months, longer. You see a huge amount of kindness, and from volunteers, but also from the people that you're working with and trying to help, because they're in some of the worst situations, and yet they're always so kind, really polite, and you just see the real strength of human spirit, and it's just astounding. And so I think that's a really wonderful thing, and makes you look at the world in a slightly different way and think about that it doesn't matter what you do, but you can always do something small to help somebody else, whether that's a friend, someone you know really well, or somebody that you have never met. And that's a quite empowering and really wonderful thing.
There's that incredible quote from the White Helmets film, where it's like, you can't help everybody, but you can help like somebody. Just like that, I feel like it's very much what we do here. Is there's no way we can get everybody everything, but we can at least try.
I was reading a story about Maya Angelou when she was a little girl, and the worst possible thing happened to her basically, and she didn't talk for quite a few years, and she just basically she was a voluntary mute, and a lady took her to the library and said, I want you to read all of the books here. And they were really kind of beautifully bound. And she just kept driving her to the library. And she said she didn't speak for years, but she read. And that's how she became this incredible voice, because she'd read all this amazing literature. And when she could speak again, she really had something to say. But also she had a medium to say it with, because she'd taken in so much beautiful prose and poetry. And I remember reading that thinking, not all of us can be Maya Angelou, but we can all be the person who drives the little girl to the library.
There's something that really struck me is that it's, we spend our days on the field or with people, but it's not work. Like even our days off, we gladly spend it with the people we work with the children. So it makes so much sense now that I'm here or that I'm doing what we're doing, like to use your day, your time, your life to make it worthwhile and, make it every morning you wake up and there's a purpose, and that has really brought me in. And one symptom was really one sign was whenever we have a day off, and when we do take it, even so, we want to spend it with the people, with the refugees, because it's not work, it's just something that feels right. It's our friends, and it's people we build connection with. So, yeah.
And I think adding to that, when you were speaking about just talking earlier, and what pushed us to come here, I think a lot. I don't know, for a lot of other people, but at least for myself, it was the need or the will to try and understand what's happening in our own community, our own continent or country. How the refugee crisis, in inverted commas, is spoken about so much. And I just the need to understand the effect that it has on people, the effect that it has on your own community, in the UK or in whichever country you're from. And if that pushes a lot of people to come, what you also then gain from being here is the ability to talk. I would never pretend that you gain the ability to fully understand anything. The longer I spend here, the more I realise I don't understand. But it's I notice then when I go home, the after effect is just speaking, you just speak and speak and speak. And I think even though sometimes it's frustrating because it feels it falls on deaf ears, the ability to speak to other people and just have one moment where a friend is shit, yeah, that's really bad, I'm going to donate, or I'm going to do something, or 2 weeks later someone comes back to you and is oh yeah, I saw that article in the news, I thought of you, or I thought of this, the people you were working with. And I think for me that makes it worthwhile, just speaking and then hearing other people speak as a result, because I think that's that's the danger in the whole situation, is silence and ignorance of it. So yeah.
In The Guardian, I think it was a little boy had said it, that the opposite of bravery isn't fear, it's silence. because we feel fear all the time, and fear is the thing that requires bravery to be able to go and do something about it. Do you guys need more volunteers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Always. Okay.
I would be pushing the older volunteer, because I think we have a lot to offer. People who are sort of like, their children have grown up and left home, and I think there's lots of people I talk to who are my age and older and go, oh, I think it's amazing what you've done, because I've been here, I started coming in 2006 because my daughter came to work at Refugee Kitchen, and the first time I came I cried all the time. I cried at the jungle, I cried unpacking bags of clothes. Somebody had donated a hand-knitted hat and there was a little note on it saying, oh God, yeah, I can remember. And it said, oh, I hope this keeps your head warm, in like little granny handwriting. That was a mess. And I thought, well, I can't possibly do anything else. I couldn't. But I came here a few times and then I went to Greece. But I think people think it's difficult and that it's not something they can do. But actually, I worked in Help Refugees warehouse in Thessaloniki, and I was warehouse mum, and I made sure everybody had a hot meal at lunchtime. I thought, everybody can do this. You don't have to have special skills. I happen to be a teacher, but actually 35 years of teaching doesn't give you the skills to teach refugee children who've never been to school and don't speak English. Which bag of skills that's in my skill set is that one? It's not there. So I would be pushing people who've got a bit more time.
So if your children have left home and you're thinking, I'd like to do something purposeful.
Purposeful, yeah.
Or, of course, many people's children have left home, they're still working or they're paying for their kids' university or whatever. But if you're somebody who feels you have got some time, and again, you can come for a week, you could come for a weekend and you can help. I think we sometimes think, oh God, that will be my whole life now. And to be honest, Joanne's not a great advertisement, because she came for a weekend and now this is her whole life, and a whole refugee camp in Greece had to be shut down so that she would leave. So I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to advertise it as a weekend, and you're then going to get stuck. Possibly, not necessarily. You can just come for a shorter period of time. I get that crying thing, and I feel so pathetic when I cry, because I think, why am I crying? Pull yourself together. Just get your white tears back in your head. And I just feel like, oh God, I'm so pathetic and so soft when I cry. And how does anyone else cope with that? Do you feel like, how dare I be the crying one? Does anyone else get that feeling? You can say it out loud because it's a podcast. People are nodding and clearly trying to hold tears back at the same time. But does anyone else get, I shouldn't cry?
It's really interesting. So sometimes I've had conversations with people here and you kind of go, oh, well, I've had a bad day, but I can't complain about it. Or I've had an argument with somebody, I can't complain about it. Like, why am I crying? Why am I struggling? And I think the only thing, a friend said it to me once and it's really stuck with me, is that we, in essence, every day we're fighting for people to be able to have that right, to have the basic human right to get upset about something silly, to have an argument with someone, to get frustrated over paperwork, like to have human rights that allow them to live normally. And if to accept that we can do that as well is kind of a gratitude of the things that we have and the privilege that we have, is to be like, yeah, I can cry about something because that is a human thing to do.
Mm. It's a really interesting point, actually, that sort of human right to cry over something silly, or something small. And actually, the more time I've spent with refugees, the more I've felt like, actually, my flatmate Steve, he's so nice about my first world problems, and he's like, no, my luggage got lost, and it had some really nice stuff in there. And Tom was like, my husband was like, oh, you're being very good about that, because I was like, well, it'll turn up or it won't. And he was like, you're being very good. And I was like, well, Steve's right there. And he's lost literally everything and currently can't travel to see his family. So I can't really go, oh, my best frock. And Steve said, no, but it is annoying when your luggage gets lost. It's really annoying. And I said this, look, there's one pair of trousers. I find it very difficult to get trousers to fit me. I don't know if any other women here have had that experience. But trousers, who do trousers fit? No women I've ever met. Every woman I know can't get trousers to fit. Why are they making them for women who don't exist? It's not clear to me. But trousers don't look that great on me. And I have one pair of trousers that I've had for years and I've patched a million times. And I've done, not personally, obviously I've taken them to a dry cleaner. I can't use the needle and thread. But I have And I was just like, if they get lost, I'd rather, to be honest, I'd rather you smash my phone because at least I can replace that. And Steve went, oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I got my favourite trousers when I was in Damascus. Got a tiny hole in them. My mum threw them out, and he said, I still think about those trousers. I was like, it's really interesting with everything that he still has. Of course, he still has days where he goes, oh bloody hell, I've dropped that now, and it's like, oh but there's no peanut butter left. What? You know, and I do feel like my friends who are refugees are not inaccessible. They haven't lost their ability to be happy with small things and sad about small things, to get annoyed, to bicker. It's all still there. And of course, you know, if there's an enormous tragedy, as human beings, we have these huge coping mechanisms. And there are times when we have no ability to cope at all because the cornflakes are stale. I always think I'm good in a crisis, but bad in a queue. You need volunteers. How do people volunteer? I know that lots of our listeners would love to volunteer. People living in sight of Calais who could get to Calais somewhere or another, people living in the UK or other parts of Europe. It is still Europe. We haven't Brexited yet. Who are allowed currently just to get on a train and get off like it's the same country, because that's a good thing. How do we do that? Where do we go? What do we do? If we say, oh, I could come for a weekend, or I could do a week, or I'm on my gap year, or, you know, my kids have left home and I fancy doing this for a couple of months or whatever. How do they do that? Who knows? Caroline? You look official.
It's the ski trousers.
Is it the ski trousers? Caroline's in salopettes, and that always gives people a sense of authority. Unless they're on a ski trip, and then no. But here it makes her look like, she's been here a while. She knows the score. She knows it's going to get wet later. She's prepared. There's a head girl quality to Caroline, I'm not going to lie. If the building was on fire, I'd follow Caroline before I followed any of you all. No. And do you know, because Caroline's a volunteer, she took that as a genuine compliment. She went, Evie is wearing the most extraordinary, amazing, it's like a penny. It's a penny of many colours. Evie in the Technicolor Dream Penny. She looks amazing. I noticed you when I came in. I would also follow you out of the building, but only because I would think you'd know where the better party was. Is that true, Evie? Do you know where the better party is?
Probably.
Yeah, Evie knows. If you come to Calais as a volunteer, ask for Evie, because she's got the gear. No, that is a joke. That's terrible. That's not true. I mean, this wasn't the question. The question was, how can people volunteer? Not when do we hit the clubs, but the question's changed. Tell me about the clubbing scene for volunteers in Calais, because this is what people really want to know. It's going to be. They will love this.
I've been here a year, so I have no idea where you are.
There's only two clubs. There's only two clubs in Calais.
No, but this is the crazy bit. I've been here for a year and a half, and it was the first time I've ever gone clubbing here.
Oh, and it was a success.
So what? Just like loads of volunteers, they just go out on the lash, hit the clubs, dance floor till 4. I'm loving this idea. Tell me about what's the Calais club called?
No.
The Caravans.
We don't even know at this point.
I don't even know. I think it's 4-4 or 5-5 or something like that.
Okay, sorry, we have the answer. Sorry, what's your name?
I'm Ellie.
Ellie.
The club in Calais is called 555 Club Discotheque.
555. Surely it's Sang Club Discotheque.
Yeah, or I can't do French.
Sang Club Discotheque.
Is
that closer? Yeah. That sounds so delightful. I swear to you, before the end of the year, I will be leading a Guilty Feminist anthem night at Sang Club Discotheque. It's going to happen, guys. It's going to happen. I will bring Felicity Ward over because she DJs, and I will organise a feminist night for the volunteers at Sang Club Discotheque.
This is great promotion for them.
Yes. Seriously. They do Ladies' Night on Thursday.
Yeah, I think it's Thursday.
I don't feel like Ladies' Night the same as Feminist Night, though, is it?
No.
Ladies' Night is much more Wonder Bras getting free. It's like, we're going to do Feminist Night. Completely. Do you go there a lot?
I've never been, but
I'd like to.
You'd like to? Right, well, we're going to make that happen. Okay, sorry. Caroline, back to the sensible question.
All right.
If people want to volunteer, how do they go about that? It feels like a really fun crew, and like you would enjoy volunteering here, is what I'm saying. So I'm preempting it with that. You could not have a good time here. These people are really, really fun, and some of them are a bit high. It's fantastic. I'm kidding. Go on.
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of different teams depending on people's interests. So if you enjoy chopping vegetables and cooking in general and seeing people eat wonderful food and taking part of that, there's a refugee community kitchen. I think for help refugees, there's a lot of different skill sets and a lot of different ways of helping. So for shorter-term volunteers, it's more logistical, sorting out clothing and helping out in the warehouse. But then there's a lot of other opportunities depending on how long you're there for and what kind of skills you're bringing in. There are teams like Utopia 56 that also do...
Sorry, isn't that the discotheque?
Well, they do host very good parties, but it is a different team. And they also do quite general and broad-based activities like distributing food and generally being everywhere as superheroes.
Yes.
There are also more specific teams, like the Women's Centre for more being there for women and children, the School Bus Project for more the education side.
And do you need teaching experience to be on the School Bus Project?
Do you need... No, Hal says no.
Hal says no. Hal says no, and Hal is not a computer, just to be clear. Those fans of 2001 have just heard almost like computer says no, but he is a real man, and he's in charge of it. And apparently, you don't need teaching experience. Do you need checks, police checks, or anything like that?
Not necessarily.
Sorry, Hal. Yes, you do.
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. You need. You just need to be compassionate and friendly. If you want to get involved really into the teaching, then we do need some what's it called? DBS. I should know that.
GBH.
But yeah, you can come on the bus and get involved in the games and music and the dancing.
Where else could people volunteer?
They could volunteer with the Refugee Youth Service, which is the team that helps young adults and unaccompanied minors in Calais. For this, you do need a DBS check. And like all teams, I think, usually the skills or more the experience isn't a prerequisite, though it's very, very helpful. And it's usually great to be able to bring something on board. But it's also a great space for people to develop those skills. And if they've always had an interest in something and decide they want to be involved, and maybe, who knows, like start a career in it or become more involved in it, it's also a great place to do that. There is the Infobus, that are the Wikipedia of Calais.
What? The Wikipedia of Calais? Can I come over here? Because I know exactly who this is, because there's been cheering from a quarter. You are... Sorry, what's your name?
Jules.
Jules.
Yeah.
Jules. So, Jules, you are the Wikipedia of Calais.
That's what they say.
In a very real way, what does that mean?
It does not mean that. That's a lie. It means we have a cute little van that drives around Calais, and we provide Wi-Fi and phone charging and general information. So really quite basic asylum information and how people can access different services around Calais and things like that. So, yeah.
Great.
That's what we do.
And what would people, if they wanted to volunteer for that service, what would they need? Do you need people who can fix phones?
We love people who can do that. But no, I have no skills whatsoever, and I'm doing it and have been for a long time. So if you have skills like being able to fix phones, if you so happen to be able to speak Pashto or Tigrinya or Amharic, we'd love you. But to be honest, all you really need, like every other team, is the enthusiasm to do it and, yeah, be good and enjoy talking to people. It's the most important.
What other languages are useful here, if people can speak other languages?
French and English are the most useful languages for being able to communicate with other volunteers. but also being able to make emergency phone calls, to talk to local charities, to talk with authorities, and so on. And then different, more like dialects or more specific languages, depending on where people come from. The list is pretty much endless.
You've got like Arabic, Urdu, Farsi, like Jill said, Sorani, the main ones. Oromo as well, yeah.
Okay, so some of these are languages we haven't heard of, listeners, much less I are able to speak. But lots of us can speak English. In fact, I would say almost all listeners of my podcast can speak or at least understand English, due to the fact that that's the language it's in. And a lot of you probably will be able to speak some basic French as well. Some of you will be able to speak some sophisticated, glamorous French, and that would be very, very welcome. If somebody came, say someone could fix phones, that's a really good skill, and knew how to get Wi-Fi working when it wasn't. There'll be lots of our listeners who can do that, or know somebody who can do that. Yeah. Can they just come for the weekend, get in that Wi-Fi truck, go around, go fix a bunch of phones, and go home? So that's their weekend in Calais. But where would they stay while they were here? Like, how does that... I think what puts people off is they're going to go, do I bring a tent? Do I stay in a hotel nearby? Like, how does it work? How do they get in touch with you? Say they wanted to do that, for example, and then where do they stay? How does the logistics work? I think that's what puts everyone off. They just go, I don't know how it works. And obviously we could ask, and that's what we're doing now.
So there are a few different options. There are various email addresses you can use for Help Refugees or Refugee Community Kitchen or whoever you want to volunteer with who will direct you. So if you're a long-term volunteer, you can stay in Caravans with all other long-term volunteers. There's also local Calais citizens who host volunteers. So if you're more short-term, that's a really good option. And the organisations will help you hook up with them. Airbnbs, you can use different Facebook groups online to meet other volunteers to plan your stay together. Have I forgotten any?
Youth hostel?
Youth hostel. There's a youth hostel that has a discount.
For volunteers.
Do you have to be young? Because I know there was an issue with some volunteers being pointed out and called old. And say you were an old volunteer, could you also stay at the youth hostel and get that discount? One of the old volunteers who will not be called an old volunteer under any circumstances said she stayed there and no one questioned her. In fact, they asked for her ID. It's always a delight when you're ID'd. So that's the other question, I suppose, is how do you fund your voluntary work? If you were coming out for the weekend, I could absolutely see you've got a job, you get yourself an Airbnb, or if you've got no cash, you stay at the youth hostel and you get the discount. I see that. But say then you go, oh God, this is amazing, and rather than being an English teacher in London, I think I'm going to come over here and I'm going to stay over here and I'm going to teach English here for 6 months, which would be an amazing thing to do. How do you fund that move? How do you you give up your flat in London or Glasgow or Barcelona or wherever you are, and you don't have to pay rent there anymore. How do you pay rent, pay for food, keep your life going while you do this, gang?
So there's a few different ways. I think it's a lot easier than people expect. So if you're staying for a long period of time, as Jules said, there's Caravans. And if you stay for over a month, then it's provided for you for free.
Okay, so if you stay for a month, you can chip in for a caravan. If you volunteer for over a month, your accommodation here is free. You get put up in a caravan.
Yeah.
What are the caravans like?
They're great fun.
My listeners will want to know that. They're great fun.
They're great fun. They're a kind of variety.
Is great fun code for cold? I'm just gonna.
That's one of the words. Yeah.
They can be cold. They can sometimes get a bit messy after we've had some parties and things.
I say party caravan.
But the more people, the warmer.
Yeah, the more people, the warmer.
That's from Evie. Party Central at Evie's caravan. She's Eve. They call her Evie. The more people, the warmer. And it's a policy that saw me well through my university years.
Yeah, but they're they're caravans. They're not 5-star accommodation, but they have all usually all the basic necessities that you need.
And there are porta showers, portaloos, that kind of thing?
They're like mobile homes, so there's usually like loos inside. So you usually live in a caravan that might have, say, 3 bedrooms and 2 beds in each bedroom, and then each caravan will have like a bit of a kitchen area, a sofa, a toilet, and a shower. And then there are also like facilities for laundry on site.
So if you come here to volunteer for a long term, you can stay in basically a mobile home, and all your basic things are taken care of. What about your food?
So Refugee Community Kitchen provide lunch for everybody who's volunteering, so you get that meal for free. And then there's usually some sweetbread, pastries that have been donated that are usually available for breakfast. And then really you only have to most people probably cover their dinner. And again, so we get quite a lot of donations as a kitchen of quite random things that we can't really use for cooking for refugees, like the occasional random tins of things, or...
Somebody told me there were like 9 tons of marzipan donated.
Yeah, that was...
Literally 9 tons, though, not hyperbolic, like actual... 9 tons.
And speculoos. We got a lot of speculoos.
What's speculoos?
It's like, you know the Biscoff Lotus biscuits? It's like the spread. It's delicious and it's vegan, so everyone here loved it.
Are there lots of vegans here?
Yeah.
Oh, you humanitarian, animalitarian, lovely people you are. So if you're vegan, you're going to fit right in. Are there also vegetarians and carnivores? Yes, there are. Okay, all right. The animals wouldn't say there was a good mix. The animals would say that's a bad mix. But you'll find your people, and you'll probably go a bit more vegan-y if you're around loads of vegans.
Yep.
Oh, so that's what happened to you?
Yeah. I can't drink normal milk anymore.
Oh, really? Where do you work, Chris?
With the refugee infobus.
You're also a walking Wikipedia.
Yes, apparently.
Wiki on wheels. So really you have to have enough money to buy yourself dinner every night, and if you haven't got that, you can always have a dinner of vegan paste and marzipan because something random has always been donated, so you won't actually starve. And apparently, if you go to Discothèque Calais, is that right? No, Discothèque. There's free entry and drinks paid. That's exactly what I was going to say. Someone will buy you a drink if you wear your salopettes. So you are covered. So do some of you come out with just like a little bit of savings, and then you just all budge up and live in together, and you just basically live on nothing, essentially, just like little bit of pocket money. What your family will chip in or help you out.
Yeah, I'm Sue, one of the older volunteers.
This is a bit of a sticking point.
I'm a teacher. I work in the Netherlands, and I saw that the bus wanted people for 3 weeks for some continuity, and I thought they'll never ever agree to that with my job. But I just asked, and I said, "Oh, can I take 2 weeks before the school holiday?" And I was a bit shocked when they said yes. So my school are actually paying for me to be here now, which is amazing, isn't it?
That's absolutely fantastic.
Shall I just say which school it is? They're called Verum Fridas in Hoorn. In the Netherlands.
That's amazing. And if other schools or organisations could sponsor people to come out and volunteer, that would be wonderful. And a lot will, actually. I know a lot of big corporations that have programmes where you can go and volunteer, and they will fund them.
Yeah, I'm Eloise, and my charity let me work remotely. So I wanted to change and come here for about 3 months, and they said, fine, we'll let you work remotely. So that's another option. So I'm working with them for 2 days a week and volunteering the rest of the time. So that's another option as well.
Has anyone got a story that they feel it's all right to tell about an interaction that they've had with a refugee they've met, or somebody that, has made it, has passed and made it, and, and the relationship they've got with them? Is there anyone you would like to talk about that you feel, or anything that's happened that you'd like to talk about, that you'd like to tell us like a story on this?
Hi, I'm Melissa.
Melissa, where are you from, Melissa?
You can tell I'm from somewhere else.
You're from somewhere else, Melissa. Where are you from?
I'm from the US.
You're from the US. Have you come here specially to volunteer at Calais?
Yes.
Wow, you got on a plane from the US.
Yes.
It's hard to imagine why when the US is currently run by such a humanitarian president. I mean, he himself has done so much for other people that aren't him. So you've come especially, how did you hear about Calais when you were in America?
Well, I recently graduated from my master's in nonprofit management, and I decided that I wanted to take some time before job searching to do something that I'd always wanted to do, which is like more humanitarian service work abroad. My family is from Puerto Rico, so I was there for a while, and helping out there. A lot of people might know about the hurricane that hit there and the lack of electricity and water on the island, and so there were organizations helping out there, and I was involved for a bit. And so then from there, a friend of mine had recommended the Refugee Women's Center, and that led me to the other organizations. So, and I decided to come to France and then to Calais.
Amazing. And has anything happened here that's really stuck with you?
Definitely, I've had many interactions that have been very life-changing. One that sticks out in particular was on the school bus project. So I had I just had this really amazing conversation with a man on the bus. We had this exchange of where we were from. I was talking about my family in Puerto Rico, and he was talking about his life back in Ethiopia, and he was teaching me a lot about Ethiopia, which I'm completely ignorant about, and also about his own life. He was an aeronautic engineer back in Ethiopia, and so it was just very
Is that an engineer for planes?
Yes, it was very eye-opening to hear about his life, and it's very humbling. I felt so. Yeah, that's a person I'll never forget.
Great, for sure. Evie,
I just want to add actually about the same guy. I once didn't have gloves, and first world problem was complaining about not having gloves. Just chatting to him, and he took his off and gave them to me. Oh. And I was just like, oh, God, why the hell am I complaining? Like, I go get some gloves. I was like, no, I'm not taking your gloves off you, but he's just such a lovely guy and just one of many.
Yeah, that happens so often.
Does it? Happens a lot. What,
yeah.
They give you something?
Yeah, like I
shouldn't say they, but refugees give volunteers something.
If you're ever cold or it's raining, I mean, yesterday I was getting 2 coats. People just come up to you and they're like, "Oh, you're cold. Have my scarf." Even though you've got one like in the van or back at a warehouse or wherever, and I think it just happens a lot that people want to give you things. Like,
see, again, I would cry then, and then I feel like so pathetic because I'm not crying because I'm frustrated. Fair enough, we all have bad days or whatever. I would be crying on behalf of the empathy of a human being who's been through terrible trauma and is now in a desperate situation, has no idea if they're ever going to be have a visa for asylum ever again, and yet they're giving me their gloves, and I would cry and I would feel pathetic because I would be like, how dare I? How do you hold it together, guys?
I think it's incredible because you see someone's capacity for empathy, and I think that's definitely built up here because, a lot of the time when someone offers you something, it's not because they're saying, oh, well, you're never going to have a coat again, you don't know where your stuff's coming from, because they know that you're going to have something back home. It's more that they know what it feels like to be cold, they know what it feels like to be hungry, and in that instant, that's all they think about and that you're thinking about. And it's like, well, you're cold, you can borrow my gloves, my hands are okay, and it's very instantaneous. And I think that's because, the guys are living from moment to moment, they live from day to day. If they have a sleeping bag now, they know they might not have it tomorrow, and everything is very in the moment.
Can you tell me about that? Firstly, donations. Not everyone can volunteer, and certainly not everyone can volunteer every day. So if you are in the UK or any other part of the world and you would like to volunteer to the Calais Women's Refugee Centre or any other part of the operation in Calais and Dunkirk, there are a lot of men who are in situations where there are no donations for them, for example. So how do people donate, and what do you need?
So there's 8 associations that work out of one warehouse, and that's including like the Women's Centre, the Info Bus, Help Refugees, Utopia, Refugee Community Kitchen. We all work out of one warehouse, and a lot of the time if you want to organise donations, you can just either email RCK or Help Refugees. And it can all be, you can either send it to one address, people can bring it over.
We're going to start a wish list. I'm afraid, I'm really sorry, and I already apologise in advance, it's probably going to be on Amazon because it's easy to see exactly what we need. These guys can put up exactly the quality of what they need, and we can see the numbers going down, but also if they need more, we can then reactivate that part of the wish list. And we know it does get delivered, and it gets delivered in a short turnaround. We can choose exactly what we want. So the wish list will be in the show notes for this, and I'll also put it at the end. So I was saying to you guys before, well, like say you need 1,000 tents. A lot of people are sleeping outside. They don't have any tents, and they don't have any sleeping bags currently. And it is freezing here, guys. It has been snowing here. I don't know, it must be 0 degrees today or -2. Yeah, it's 0 to -2, I think, at the moment. And people are sleeping outside, even minors, even children are sometimes sleeping outside. And I was saying, well, what if we got enough tents that there was a surplus? And you said the police confiscate tents.
Yeah, so the problem is that at the moment, so there's the CRS, which are in Calais, and they're basically riot police. In normal context, they control football crowds or like concerts. But in Calais, for the past, God knows how long, at least the past 2 years that I've been here, they're here, they're stationed here permanently. And
they're not regular police, are they?
No. So basically, they're not trained to be police officers. They do their job and that's it. But they don't have a knowledge of the law. They don't have a knowledge of police systems, which means, and they are essentially. They were described actually by the ambulance service that I spoke to the other day as thugs in uniform. This is the French ambulance service that described them as this. And
do they recruit people who they feel will, in inverted commas, get the job done, do you think?
Essentially, yes.
How long does any one CRS police officer, in inverted commas, stay in Calais?
So the companies are stationed here for about 2 weeks and then they turn over, basically so that they can't learn to empathise with the people that they end up confiscating items off. There's so many cases of police brutality where it's not a pleasant talk about, but the violence that people receive. They spray people's sleeping bags with tear gas. They spray people when they're sleeping. They beat people while they're sleeping. Beat people during the day. The accounts that we hear every single day. It's a never-ending list of things that the police do.
That's truly, truly horrendous. And they only stay 2 weeks, so they don't humanise and get to know anybody, get to know anyone's name.
Yeah.
It must have an effect on. I just want to say this if people are going to go, but I think it is interesting what you said before. How do those people? Is it men? Is it always men?
There are some females, not that many, but some.
So how do the people who work for the CRS as these sort of mercenary ersatz police officers, how do you think they sleep at night?
I think it's difficult. What you were speaking about earlier was that I think a lot of the time people have to justify to themselves how they're doing things. They go, I just do my job. So people are, the CRS are only here for 2 weeks and they get their order. What we've kind of witnessed is that each company seems to have a different kind of policy. They'll be sent to do a certain amount of tent clearances, or they'll be sent to.
What are they hoping to gain from taking people's tents away? Because they know that people have nowhere to go.
So they think that it's the same with the eviction of the jungle. There was about 8,000 to 10,000 people here.
So just to contextualise, because people listen to this all over the world, the Calais jungle was a refugee camp that was self-built, and there were lots and lots of shelters built, and there was lots of facilities. There were restaurants.
Yeah.
It was very much people's homes. It was on a very small piece of land, but there were up to 9,000 people here, and the French government saw fit basically to bulldoze it to the ground.
Yeah.
And basically everyone lost their temporary but very important homes and community.
So they closed the camp and there was the demolition, and this is what we argued about at the time. And they said that there were buses to accommodation centres and that they did occur. But the French state has been known to lie to people about what these centres are going to be, whether they're going to have to give fingerprints. And the French state seems to think that by ordering tent clearances, by, increasing the levels of police numbers, which Theresa May is funding with £41 million in a new deal that's been made.
She's funding what?
So there's 44 million been given in a new deal that was made between Macron and May. 41 million of that is going to increase security, which means increased police, increased CRS officers.
To stop refugees
Yeah,
go
to deter people from being here, essentially.
and to stop them trying to get from France to the UK.
And then in comparison to that, so you've got 41 million, and then 3.6 million was given to help family reunification. That's the scales. But yeah, so they aim to deter people from being here. The French state doesn't seem to think about where these people are going to go. They just don't want them in Calais because that's how it looks so bad in the media.
So they hope if they take people's sleeping bags away and they burn their tents or they pepper spray them and their children, they hope they will leave and people will hear Calais is a terrible place, don't go there. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind.
So how often do they confiscate the tents and the sleeping bags of vulnerable people from traumatic circumstances that have nowhere else to go? How often does that happen?
So there's several distribution points, and this is just in Calais. There's obviously like Dunkirk as well and other areas in northern France, but there will be, multiple confiscations during the week. There can be even 1, 2, 3 at the same place.
So can we get enough tents to you? Is that possible? Like how if we set up this wish list, how many tents would we need to donate each week so that it meant that if the police came in and confiscated everyone's tents, new tents would be available to them?
So in theory, there's the amount of people in northern, in Calais and Dunkirk at the moment is between 1,000 and 2,000. And if there's a tent clearance every week, that's 1,000 tents every week.
They take them all?
Not all of them, but they do multiple clearances.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So they just take their tents away. They just say, this is your tent, but I'm taking it. It's just
or they
steal
destroy it.
Yeah.
But what kind of emotional effect is that on someone just watching their tent be destroyed? That's just the only thing they have.
Sadly, I think a lot of people are used to it.
So they just go, this is just Wednesday.
Yeah.
And do they come to you for a new tent? And if you have one, you give it to them, and if you don't, you can't.
Yeah, essentially. And the problem is that the scale that it's happening on and the the donations and supplier donations that we have, there's often a disappointment there, which means that we sadly have to disappoint people a lot. We never always have, a ready stock of 10,000 tents in the warehouse that we can go, yes, we can do a distribution every time this happens, because we just don't have the supply, we don't have enough.
Okay.
Calais isn't in the media at the moment. It's, it's a lot quieter than back in the days of the jungle. The attention, the spotlight isn't here anymore.
Right, so we need Guilty Feminist listeners to help with tents and sleeping bags. They're the main things. Is there anything else that you desperately need? We can make the wish list, but just so you can tell us.
For general distributions, it's warm men's clothing. Small and medium sizes is absolutely ideal. And then obviously the women's centre needs stuff as well.
Great. Well, we'll make the wish list, and our priority is tents and sleeping bags, because if people are sleeping on the ground in the freezing cold, that is really worse than anything. So we will prioritise that, but we will put up all the stuff that you need. Do you find that watching they're not really police, but the CRS, watching the mercenaries hired by the state, basically, let's be very clear about what it is, destroy property, take away children's sleeping bags and shoes and things like that, does that eat at you in a way that we're saying, oh, isn't it wonderful when you meet a scientist from Eritrea who gives you his gloves, and then a woman from Kazakhstan who shares her meal with you, and that's this incredible experience where you get to have these amazing exchanges and you meet people and you get to play with children and teach them and have this wonderful exchange. Does the CRS's actions, does it erode something in you at the same time? How do you cope with it?
I think it depends who you are, and it depends what day it is. Sometimes, for me anyway, sometimes it's the most frustrating thing I've ever seen. You see volunteers spend hours and hours and hours trying to organise a tent distribution that goes really, really well, and everybody that comes gets a tent, and that's incredible. And then you see that later that day, everything's taken away. And sometimes it feels like it's endless. Sometimes it feels like this problem is, at the moment and the solutions that there are now, unless, people change foreign policy, this problem isn't going anywhere. And sometimes it feels like it's a never-ending problem that we're constantly grinding away at and just standing completely still. And then some days you kind of are motivated to do more. You see that, this is what they're doing and this is what we're doing, and this is the fight we can fight. We can give things. We can be that solidarity for people. Some days it's inspiring. Some days it's utterly depressing.
Just wanted to say something really quickly to anyone who's thinking about donating. With regards to the clearances and the confiscations of people's belongings, I just want to say to anyone who feels like it might sound like it's futile in donating things that might be destroyed or confiscated within a week, it's actually, especially because we're in winter, even one person having a tent or a sleeping bag for one night can actually be life-saving. It can be the difference between someone sleeping out in the snow, as we have had recently, or being dry at least. So even though it might be taken away from them, for us to be able to replace them and keep people relatively sheltered for one night is really important.
And if I can just add the same again about ideas about donating, you don't need to give much. So in terms of the kitchen, it's so important for when it's really cold, horrendous weather, that we provide really nutritional, filling, high-calorie meals to people twice a day in Calais and Dunkirk, and we generally are able to provide 2 hot meals for £1, and that's a meal of rice, curry and salad, so making sure that it's really hot but also that there's nutrition and lots of vegetables in there. So if you can only say donate some money and you feel like you can't donate much, even £1 provides 2 meals for somebody, and it's, you know, we make sure that those meals are really tasty, really enjoyable, but also really nutritious, and especially in this weather that's really important.
That's really good to know. So if you donated £10,
that's 20 meals.
That's 20 meals.
20 meals.
Really lovely home cooked meals with lots of care and love in them, and that really, you know, keeps both spirit and body together, and also really keeps morale up. That's amazing. Is there anything else anyone wants to say about what you need, what you love, what you hate, anything you want to get off your chest, anything that frustrates you? Yes.
Just one super good organisation that I just realised we haven't mentioned at all is Phone Credit for Refugees and Displaced People, which, so, like, obviously everyone, like, a phone is the most useful thing you can have. If, like, for refugees who are here, they can talk to their family, they can get in touch with emergency services. But a lot of the time they don't have money for phone credit, and Phone Credit for Refugees and Displaced People does amazing work. Like, people donate to them and then they do top-ups for people, but they have a huge waiting list and kind of a lack of funds. So if anyone wants to donate, that would be an amazing place to give money to.
We will also put that on the show notes and on the website, and it will appear at the end of this podcast as well, where you can donate for that. So there's something everyone can do. Even if you've got £1, you can give that, and that will be 2 hot meals for somebody. If you've got some money for phone credit, if you can afford to buy a tent, and we don't want to imply that everyone's tent is taken away within 24 hours. It's you know, lots of people, you know, do keep their tents for longer, and how long is it possible that someone keeps their tent and is able to kind of protect it?
It depends. Also, there's, like, you know, the weather conditions to remember. You know, tents are a lot of the time designed for going camping and not for living in. So people can, you know, can keep them for a certain amount of time. But also people have their belongings, and that's really important to them as well. And a tent can help people keep their belongings safe.
Okay. So tents are important, sleeping bags are important, warm clothes, and you yourself coming out, meeting people, volunteering for an afternoon, a weekend, a week. What have you got? Instead of a really irritating holiday where you just lie around feeling shit and, you know, with mosquitoes and bickering with your partner, which, let's be clear, many holidays are just that. Disappointing weather beside a pool that looks unsavoury, and while you bicker with your family. Come out, take your week off and come out here. I mean, and go to Sang Club Discothèque.
Something else to remember, if you can't come to Calais yourself, if you can't maybe donate physical items or money, is also we've got web pages and Facebook pages for all the organisations working here. So if you just go to Facebook, look for Help Refugees, Refugee Kitchen, or really any of the organisations working on the ground, sharing our posts with your friends and family, just showing people what we're doing and what's happening here is really, really important, really helpful, because it's not in the media. Like, the story of what's happening here isn't being told, it's not being shown. A lot of people who are here helping right now weren't aware of what was happening,
and only by like getting the word out about it, we can help and we can continue the work we're doing. So that's a really, really great way to be involved. It takes a little bit of your time, but it's free besides that.
And continuing putting pressure on your, like, especially the UK and French governments, but other European governments as well, to like start taking the issue seriously, especially in the UK. Stuff is like actually fulfilling their promise to speed up family reunification, making sure that the promises on like the Dubs Amendment are fulfilled as well, because there's been a lot of empty promises made, and so continuing like to remain in contact with MPs to keep up like advocacy campaigns, and that can be found out about through charities like Help Refugees, Safe Passage, also the Refugee Youth Service have been really active in that.
If we wanted to know more about that, how we can affect policy as voters, because you know, if we, it's important right now. We've just got to help people and get them tents and stuff. But if we keep doing everything and not putting pressure on the government, they go, they got this. So we need to put pressure on our MPs. They work for us. We have to remember that. They've got their job because we pay them to do what we want, and it's a democracy. So we need to put more pressure on them. Yeah. What do we ask our MPs for if we're in the UK? There's a template letter. Guys, it's been done for you. You don't even have to write the letter. The template letter has been done.
It's on the Infobus website.
It's on the Infobus website, and the Infobus website is?
RefugeeInfobus.com.
RefugeeInfobus.com. It couldn't be simpler. You go, you get that template letter, you send it to your MP, you follow up, you check, you keep on sending that to your MP. You send that to you send that to your MP as often as the CRS clear tents. You keep on sending it until they're annoyed by you, because they do work for us. And there's a sense where we sometimes think, oh, well, I voted 4 years ago, and the people I didn't like got in, and what can I do? Well, we can ask the people who are meant to be representing us to represent us in the way that we want to be represented, and not just in the way that they want to represent us. That's a really, really important point. Can you tell us about the Dubs Agreement? Just look up the Dubs Agreement on Wikipedia. Is that a better thing to do?
Wikipedia's over there. Calais Wikipedia.
Let's go to the Calais Wikipedia bus. Just tell us, just really headlines, 2 sentences. What's the Dubs Agreement?
Can I think about it for a second?
Yeah. You're meant to be a living Wikipedia, so it's a bit disappointing, to be honest, that you're thinking about it.
The Dubs Amendment to the Dublin Agreement, isn't it?
It's the Dubs Amendment and Dublin.
Yeah, they're two separate things.
Oh, okay. Doesn't matter. We can look it up on Wikipedia. So look up the Dubs Agreement on Wikipedia.
It's the Dubs Amendment and the Dublin Agreement.
Okay. Look up the Dublin Agreement and the Dubs Amendment on Wikipedia, and just find out a little bit more about the policies that are being made, because they're being made for and on behalf of us, and most of the time we don't even know what they are. So we need to educate ourselves and find out what's going on so that we can put the right pressure on the right MPs and get stuff changed. You have been listening to The Guilty Feminist from the Calais Warehouse and Sack Club Discotheque. It's been Deborah Frances White, and these have been the volunteers of Calais and Donegal. There are lots of ways you can get involved. As you heard, the volunteers in Calais really need help. You can be a day player, you can come for the weekend, you can come for 1 week of your holiday. There are all sorts of ways to help, but every single hour, afternoon or day that you put in allows the permanent volunteers who are there to do life-saving work. So if you would like to volunteer in Calais and other hotspots in Europe, Help Refugees and their partners are in desperate need. Whoever you are, whatever your skill set, if you think you can help, please visit helprefugees.org/volunteer. You can also make a tangible impact by shopping online, not for yourself, but for refugees in need. Visit the Choose Love store at www.choose.love and purchase sleeping bags, warm blankets, and other essential items that are most needed right now. Use the code GUILTYFEMINIST, one word, capital G, capital F. That's GUILTYFEMINIST, one word, capital G, capital F, at the checkout to send them straight to Calais and Dunkirk. And Help Refugees are the biggest grassroots refugee charity in Europe right now. Your donations will help them provide food, shelter, medical care, and more to 80 projects across the world. Visit helprefugees.org to learn more and donate today. The real solution to this crisis is ultimately political. Help Refugees and their partners lobby governments to provide safe and legal routes for refugees. We can all help support by writing to our MPs. Follow Help Refugees on social media to find out how to join campaigns on issues, including unaccompanied children and family reunion. Whether you have time or money or both or hardly any of either, there are all sorts of ways to get involved. Please visit helprefugees.org now. Also, The Guilty Feminist is doing a Comics for Calais fundraiser on the 2nd of May in London, which will have a sister show in Calais where comedians will be volunteering and doing a show in the evening. And these two shows will Skype back and forth, so we'll be able to visit London from Calais and Calais from London. So if you are in London, please save the date. May 2nd, there'll be some amazing comedians. Already on the bill, we have Jessica Foster-Q, Desiree Birch and Phil Jupitus. So if you could put the date in and we will let you know the venue and where to get tickets very soon.